Welcome to Access for All. We're the Access for All team of Wheelchair Boy, the Stone of Truth, and me, Robert Gorski, dissect and explain different aspects of the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA for short. In the previous program, I did not have time to complete a photo tour that illustrated how the ADA requirements, along with common sense, make pedestrian travel accessible and safe for people with disabilities. The tour also included examples of issues that frustrate and make pedestrian travel unsafe for people with disabilities. Strolling Pasadena was the name of the previous program, and this program is Strolling Pasadena Part 2. The word strolling is used with great intention and is a firm recommendation by Wheelchair Boy and seconded with enthusiasm by the Stone of Truth. Wheelchair Boy sees it this way. Users of wheelchairs and scooters don't walk on a sidewalk, they roll over it. People with walkers roll the walker while the person walks, and everyone else walks. In some pedestrians roll and some pedestrians walk. But it seems odd to refer to both with either the word roll or walk. How about one word that can be applied to both without awkwardness? Wheelchair Boy champions the word stroll. Together, all people who roll and all people who walk are people who stroll. So let's start strolling Pasadena by quickly reviewing photographs covered in the previous program. Photo number 1 shows sidewalk that is wide, smooth, and continuous. Photo 2 shows brickwork that causes annoying vibration for users of wheelchairs, scooters, and walkers. Number 3, a rough textured surface is greatly annoying to roll over. Number 4, the sidewalk is too narrow for wheelchairs, scooters, or walkers going in opposite directions to pass each other. Number 5, a sign pole planted in the middle of the sidewalk renders the pathway inaccessible. Number 6, artwork with a sharp edge protrudes into the pathway, and there needs to be something done to protect passing pedestrians. Number 7, the pipe running down the wall may protrude no more than 4 inches into the pathway between a height of 27 inches and 80 inches. This is a protection for people who are blind. Photo number 8. While the distance between the support poles of the freeway sign and the clear height below the sign meet minimum specifications for accessibility, the sign has great potential for being a problem. Photos 9 and 10 are sort of companion pieces. They show signboards and street furniture that can reduce the usable width of a sidewalk. Photo number 11 shows that some bus shelters are located close to buildings, tree wells, and other sidewalk features that shrink the usable width or complicate the shape of the accessible pathway. Number 12, tree wells with deep drop-offs can be very hazardous to anyone with impaired mobility or vision. Photo 13. This hazardous drop-off is next to a crosswalk control button. In approaching the button, I got my rear wheel caught in the drop-off, and a passerby got me free. Photo number 14. A sidewalk uplift as small as a ½ inch in height is a serious annoyance to people who use wheelchairs, scooters, and walkers, and is a trip hazard for anyone with impaired walking. Number 15. Or the uplift can be an unnerving thrill ride, or perhaps an impossible barrier. Photo 16. Here is sidewalk broken and cracked, perhaps by being driven over by a truck. Photo 17. A curb ramp in California's pre-ADA design. The diagonal lines incised down the middle and around the ramp's borders are not included in the ADA standards. Photo 18. A curb ramp built before truncated domes were required. Photo 19, a ramp with truncated domes which give tactile and visual cues to people who are blind or have impaired vision. Photo 20, a curb ramp with insufficient flat area at top of the slope. Number 21, a curb ramp with no side slopes. This can be very hazardous. Photo 22, a standard crosswalk with 2 vertical borders. Now, I don't have a photograph for number 23, so just imagine it illustrates a crosswalk with horizontal stripes between the borders. It's a design much preferred by people with impaired vision. Okay, we do have photo number 24, crosswalk with the brick surface. Again, when I cross here, I stroll either to the extreme left or right. Now, let's look at some new photos. Photo number 25. Now, I know there's a technical name for crosswalks at this intersection in Old Pasadena where pedestrians may cross diagonally, as well as horizontally and vertically. But I call it a scramble intersection. It does not violate the ADA standards. Nevertheless, it can be a serious challenge to pedestrians who are blind or have impaired vision. Blind pedestrians typically pay much attention to the sound of traffic, and when the traffic noise in one direction at an intersection is quiet, a person who is blind calculates it is safe to cross in front of the quiet traffic. But at a scramble intersection, traffic in all directions is stopped to allow pedestrians 3 choices to cross. Some blind people forego the opportunity to cross diagonally. Instead, he or she will cross the intersection in the standard manner and then wait the extra time for the next period that all traffic noise ceases in order to cross the other street. Nevertheless, some blind people who are blind and listen to the sound of pedestrians beginning to cross diagonally and simply follow the sound of those pedestrians. Let's move to the next photo, number 26. In this photo, you see a crosswalk control button with a large button. This large yellow button is not required by Title IIA of the ADA, which is enforced by the Department of Justice. But the Department of Transportation may require this size of button when it funds transportation projects. Fortunately, the large button has become the industry standard nowadays. Photo number 27. Accessible walk sign control box. The box has the name of the street in Braille and raised letters and has a recorded voice message that plays when the walk sign is lit. Again, this control box is not required by Title IIA of the ADA, but Pasadena has installed them at several locations requested by people with impaired vision. The next photo was taken at the corner of Lake and Colorado, an intersection with a high volume of traffic as well as noise that makes, I'm sorry, we don't have a photograph for that one, so just imagine we're looking at another control box. Lake in Colorado, where there's a lot of traffic noise and a lot of noise that makes listening for traffic cues a challenge for people with impaired vision. Okay, now we can move to photo 28, where we can see a walk sign control box located on an inaccessible pedestrian island. Not reachable by many people who use mobility devices and impossible to locate for many people with impaired vision. Finally, after using an accessible sidewalk, curb ramps, and crosswalks to approach a destination, a pedestrian with impaired mobility may need to use a directional signage to find a building's accessible entrance. This is particularly important when a large building has multiple entrances and not all are accessible. Wheelchair Boy wants me to underscore how difficult this is for him. His wheels are so small, it takes a lot of pushing in his manual chair to go searching for an accessible entrance. So, photo 29, let's look at a directional sign that has the access symbol and the word entrance, but the sign is so small in size, it is hard to read by a person on the nearby sidewalk. Photo number 30, another sign with the access symbol and the word entrance, but following the sign's information is frustrating. The sign is located at a side street entrance and indicates go left to find the accessible front entrance. But going to the left and rounding the corner reveals no entrance and no sign saying what to do now. Continuing along the street and rounding the next corner reveals another entrance with steps and yet another sign indicating that the accessible entrance is to the left. Yet, continuing left to the end of the building reveals no entrance and no additional signage. But if you round the next corner of the building and enter the building's parking lot, you will see accessible parking spaces located next to the only accessible entrance to the building. It would be much better if all the directional signs read, "Enter through parking lot on north side." Photo number 31. Oh, the brown and dark gray colors of this sign are poor choices. Nowadays, everyone looks for accessibility signs in dark blue color. Also, the text about the ramp is very imprecise. Where does the ramp go? Why would I want to use it? Photo number 32 is the next photo, and it's the last in our stroll through Pasadena. Shows a nice blue directional sign. The articulated arrow indicates that the route to the accessible entrance involves going to the left and then making a turn to the right. Better directional sign, but not perfect. If you follow the arrow after you make the turn to the right, you see a ramp leading to entrance doors. However, after ascending the ramp, you find the doors are locked. In fact, the doors are kept locked except for special events held inside that part of the building. There is an accessible entrance to the building, but you must continue strolling around the next corner of the building and then through a parking lot. Now, to reinforce several of the important concepts covered in this stroll through Pasadena, I'm going to play portions of 2 computer animations. The animations are on the website of the United States Access Board. In previous programs, I've mentioned how critical the board has been and continues to be for progress in accessibility. Here is the board's home site. And I'm going to have to change my glasses in order to read the screen here. Okay, there's a lot of options for a vast wealth of information. But we're going to concentrate on just one of the links. Along the upper right-hand side of the page, there are a couple of things called featured links. The one in the middle is called accessibility animations. Let's choose that one. That takes us to a new page with several thumbnail, sort of thumb pictures. Each one is an animation. Let us go to wheelchair maneuvering. I'm going to choose wheelchair maneuvering, and we will view the first half of a 9-minute animation. The animation covers basic needs for clear space and strolling services for a standard manual wheelchair. This information is applicable to many situations covered by the first 3 titles of the ADA. Here we go.
The ADA and ABA standards address access for various types of disabilities and mobility aids. Some provisions are best understood in relation to the use of wheelchairs and powered devices. This animation illustrates wheelchair maneuvering and requirements in the standards for clearances, floor surfaces, and reach ranges. Space at least 30 inches wide and 48 inches long is required to accommodate an occupied wheelchair. To allow room for movement and sway, accessible routes must provide a continuous clear width of at least 36 inches. The width can reduce to a 32-inch minimum at points, such as doorways. Segments with a reduced width are limited to a depth of 24 inches, and there must be a separation of at least 48 inches between them. Where routes make a turn around an obstruction, additional space is required depending on the tightness of the turn. If an obstruction is at least 48 inches wide, additional clear width is not required. If an obstruction is less than 48 inches wide, the route clear width can remain 36 inches minimum if at least 60 inches is provided at the turn to facilitate maneuvering. Otherwise, the clear width must be at least 42 inches approaching the turn, 48 inches minimum at the turn, and 42 inches beyond the turn. Space at least 60 inches wide provides room for wheelchairs to pass. Where routes are less than 60 inches wide, passing space 60 inches by 60 inches minimum is required at 200-foot intervals. Passing space can also be achieved at route intersections with segments at least 48 inches deep. Maneuvering clearances required at doors, which are sized according to the approach and swing, usually require additional space beyond the minimum clear width of routes. Room for turning is required in certain spaces, such as toilet rooms and dressing rooms. Turning space can be provided in the form of a 60-inch minimum diameter circle or a T-shaped space. Maneuvering for turns varies by mobility aid and personal preferences and abilities. With manual chairs, moving wheels in opposite directions is the most efficient way to turn. Turns can also be made by keeping one wheel stationary. Among powered devices, the turning radius can vary greatly. Objects that provide space for knees and toes can overlap turning space. Minimizing such overlap or avoiding it altogether is advisable to provide easier access, especially for larger devices such as scooters and power chairs. Turning space can also be provided in the shape of a T that is at least 60 inches by 60 inches overall, with segments at least 36 inches wide. This space can be oriented for approach on any segment of the T. Objects with knee and toe space can overlap only one segment of the T so that the other two remain clear for approach and backing up. Turning within the minimum dimensions specified can be difficult using scooters and similar devices that have a larger turning radius. The availability of additional space beyond the minimum required will ease maneuvering. Also, avoiding overlap of the space by an object will better accommodate devices with front tillers. The standards also address ground and floor surfaces. The surfaces must be firm, stable, and slip resistant, and changes in level must be properly treated. Abrupt level changes can be difficult to negotiate and can catch front casters unless properly edged or sloped. Changes in level up to 1/4 inch are permitted without treatment. Level changes up to 1/2 inch must be beveled with a slope no steeper than 1 to 2. Changes in level higher than 1/2 inch must be ramped. The standards also limit openings, such as grates, in ground and floor surfaces. Surface openings that are too wide can catch wheelchair front casters, as well as the tips of crutches and walkers. Openings in accessible surfaces cannot exceed 1/2 inch in
Okay,
one
we're going to
dimension.
stop there.
Openings must
Great
be
piece
oriented
of
so that the long
animation.
dimension is
Hopefully you've learned a lot. Let's move to another animation. Now we'll move to an animation called Protruding Objects. This topic focuses on how people who are blind navigate both interior and exterior spaces. Again, we'll watch just the first 5.5 minutes of this 9-minute animation.
This animation explains requirements for protruding objects in the ADA and ABA standards. Objects that protrude into circulation paths from walls or posts can be hazardous to people with vision impairments. Common examples include shelves, sconces, signs, kiosks, drinking fountains, and monitors. The ADA and ABA standards set limits on the projection of such objects depending on their mounting height. Since people with vision impairments may not need to travel along accessible routes, requirements for protruding objects apply to all circulation paths, including inaccessible routes. Unlike most other provisions in the standards, they are not limited to accessible routes or spaces and encompass all ways of passage for pedestrian travel, including walks, hallways, stairways, ramps, elevators and lifts, and courtyards. The requirements apply to the entire width of circulation paths. Both interior and exterior circulation paths are covered by these provisions. People who are blind or who have low vision sometimes travel along walls for orientation or wayfinding, particularly in unfamiliar environments. This technique is known as trailing or shorelining. Objects that protrude into circulation paths from walls, columns, and other surfaces that are above the standard sweep of long canes are hazardous unless properly treated. Objects that are mounted above a height of 80 inches provide minimum headroom clearance and can protrude any amount. Those with leading edges at or below 27 inches above the floor or ground can project any distance from wall surfaces because they can be detected by long canes without body contact. Providing detectability at heights well below 27 inches will allow more response time, especially for people of short stature, children, and users of short canes. Protruding objects with leading edges above 27 inches, but no more than 80 inches high, are within the hazard zone. They are limited to a protrusion of 4 inches, or in the case of handrails, 4.5 inches. Objects in this range that exceed this limit must be properly treated so that they do not pose safety hazards. One option for elements not required to be within reach is to locate them so that they provide a headroom clearance of at least 80 inches. Examples include signs not required to be tactile and sconces. Another solution is to limit an object's projection into circulation paths to 4 inches, such as a counter at a service window. Or the counter can be partially enclosed so that it's detectable within the 27-inch high maximum cane sweep. The leading edge of the counter cannot project more than 4 inches from the detectable portion that is within cane sweep. A side approach for wheelchair access is permitted to sales and service counters. However, at other elements where a forward approach is required or preferred, solutions cannot obstruct required clearances for knees and toes. Side panels provide a solution that will accommodate access for a forward approach. In all cases, solutions must be fixed or built in so that they remain reliably in place. In new construction and alterations, movable elements or furnishings are not acceptable alternatives in treating protruding objects. Extended wall surfaces and fixed cabinets or enclosures below protruding objects can be used at other elements, such as monitors. Treatments must extend to within 4 inches of the leading edge of the protrusion. Note that some solutions may impact the height of operable parts or controls that are required to be within accessible reach range. The maximum height is reduced when the reach extends over an obstruction beyond a certain depth. Another option is to recess objects so that the projection into circulation paths does not exceed 4 inches. This is often a good solution for cabinets, shelves, and display cases. Fixtures, such as cantilevered drinking fountains, can be recessed in alcoves. Fixed objects, such as benches, planters, or partitions, can be used to recess objects and to provide barriers on both sides of a protruding object. When recessing other types of elements in alcoves, be sure to accommodate the clear floor space that is required for wheelchair access. Wheelchair-accessible drinking fountains must provide a knee clearance at least 27 inches high. If they are located so they provide but do not exceed this clearance, they do not require treatment as a protruding object, since the leading edge is on the boundary of cane detection. Wheelchair-accessible units or bowls providing a knee clearance of exactly 27 inches can be used to enclose one side of cantilevered drinking fountains that are above the 27-inch height to serve standees. These requirements are not limited to wall-mounted objects. They also apply to objects mounted to partitions, columns, counters, and other elements, such as standpipes. Standalone objects that are fixed or built in are covered as well where they protrude into circulation paths. Examples include some types of kiosks and sculptures. In the case of a fixed sculpture, a platform or base can be used to provide cane detectability at hazardous protrusions. The platform or base should be high enough
Okay,
so
we'll
that it is
stop
not
there.
mistaken for a curb or
And
step. A height of
sorry
about
about
8
the
foot will be
technical glitch. We lost our captioning, and we had that strange little sort of graphic in the middle. But anyway, I hope this program leaves you with an awareness that accessibility is a matter of compliance with the ADA and of thoughtful planning of what it takes for pedestrians with various disabilities to negotiate an urban environment. To achieve access for all takes the law and common sense. It's time to conclude this presentation of Access for All. Remember the program's email address, accessforall@yahoo.com. Use the address to make a comment or to ask a question of the Access for All team. Also, you may ask me or another member of the team to speak about the ADA to a group. Still, be mindful that the Stone of Truth is quite limited in its communication skills. Recently, I've spoken to a class of students studying for a certificate in occupational therapy and to a coalition of bicycling advocates interested in understanding how people with disabilities travel about as pedestrians. Until the next program, I wish all people with disabilities and all temporarily able-bodied people good fortune, and let's look forward to the day when the Pledge of Allegiance concludes with liberty, justice, and access for all.